I'm joined by the one and only Miss Rebecca Downs. How you doing, Rebecca?
I'm good. I'm good, Lee. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. Yeah, it's good to catch up with you, mate. Been a little while since we had a chat, so thanks for coming back.
No problem. Always good to talk to you.
Bless you. A couple of days ago, well, a couple of weeks ago now, you released These Days, beautiful new single. First one coming from your forthcoming album out a little late this year. What I've always loved about your music, mate, and we spoke about it before, it's always sort of from the heart and it's always very soulful. But this one in particular seemed a little real singing from your heart kind of song. Would that be fair to say?
I think it would be fair to say I think maybe the entire album is probably a bit like that, but there's certain songs that I think will sort of eke that out of you a bit more than others.
Yeah.
It is like lyrically, it's overridingly a take on kind of the things that are happening in the world at the moment and the timeline we find ourselves in, which is kind of unsettling. Whichever side you stand on, to be honest, I would imagine it's quite unsettling for everyone. And also sort of a take on, it was a personal take. I was looking at when I initially kind of came up with it now and passed it on to Stephen.
Hmm.
It's yeah, it was right sort of in the kind of the last sort of throes of mom not being very well. And even though, so it's kind of like a reflection on, it is a wider reflection, but it's definitely, it was written in a state of, you know, exhaustion probably with the situation, but, and also kind of an exhaustion with, I'm kind of rattling on, sorry, but like after COVID, which kind of was very impactful on me and my family because they basically sawed mom into dementia. Through all of that and all of that that was going on for everyone, not the dementia, but the COVID, um, I thought that there might be like a renaissance post that, like a hope. There was a hopeful element. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think as soon as like the second lockdown had hit, and it seems like a hell of a long time ago now, there was kind of like a feeling, and I think it wasn't just me, that maybe we'd start treating each other better, and maybe there'd be a bit more care, and
Mm.
do you know what I mean? And
There was definitely that about. I mean, me and my mates have spoken about this recently with everything that's going on in the world and the kind of divider and conquering that seems to be going through. And, I could talk about that for a long time, but I won't. Um, but this sort of dividing nation that we seem to be in again, whereas before, and we're only going back 5 years, which isn't a long time. It feels like a long time ago. It feels like another lifetime ago. But, you know, people seem to be, checking in on neighbours a bit more. Simple things like, everybody clapping on the doorsteps for NHS workers and things. They seem to be this little bit, okay, we're in this together. This,
mm,
the whole world was in a one thing, one place, and battling something that, no, none of us had seen in our lifetimes before. And it seemed to be a united front, and that seems to have dissipated very, very quickly in the grand scheme of things. Um, there's a lot of anger, I feel, in the world at the moment,
mm-hmm.
and everyone's very keen to jump on the what party do you sit at? Where's your political persuasion? Where's your human rights persuasion? Where's your, how you view, LGBTQ plus community and all those kind of things, and already trying to put you back in the box. And if your box is different to theirs, then you're wrong. Uh,
Yeah,
on both
absolutely.
sides of that coin, I've got to say that, I feel like it's both sides of that coin. So yeah, I wouldn't disagree with what you're just saying there, mate.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. It's quite a divisive time that
Mm.
we live in. Like there is no kind of, oh well, we can still sort of break bread if we're from different parts of the coin. It's not that at all, is it? It's almost like this growing, ever growing divide, and not just here, but in other parts of the world. And that's kind of what it's a take on. It was kind of like, oh bloody hell, I thought we'd all learn. And I thought at this time we'd learn, and now we're not again. And it's kind of, it's about that really. It's like, oh, here we go again, sort of thing. when I did think, even the fact that, the wildlife had a resurgence over
Yeah.
lockdown, things like that, that were beautiful aspects in a very ever changing, very scary, very traumatic landscape. There was evidence of hope and humanity. And I know, again, sort of deep down the road, but that's what it's about. It's about kind of feeling that that doesn't exist to the level it should anymore.
No, and it's scary, to be honest, how backward we seem to have gone, regressed even further than where we were before, with this
Yeah.
dividing nature conquering business. It seems. Me and my mates were talking this at the weekend. We noticed how language that wasn't acceptable 5 years ago, that people would stand up and go, "Mate, what are you saying? That is
Mm.
horrendous. That is ridiculous." People are kind of ignoring it again, and that's a very dangerous position to be in when people are being, pointed out. I was going to use the word persecuted. That might sound a bit dramatic, but it is what it is. If people are getting pointed out for their race, their religion, their sexuality, their chosen gender, whatever it is, and people are feeling they have a right to belittle them, bully them in any way, and people aren't standing by what I believe to the right thing to be, and saying, this isn't right. What are you doing? I think we're in a very dangerous position as a human society, to be honest. But
Yeah, I think so, and the song definitely speaks about that, and also about like the kind of what you were saying there about you kind of tarring everyone in a certain group with the same brush.
yeah.
So, all that person's from that group, so they're all going to be like that, and it's kind of about that. Whereas, you know, trying to see people as individuals and people and flesh and blood, just like your own self. So, a bit of kindness, a bit of humanity wouldn't go amiss, I don't think,
No.
right now. And so, yeah, it's about that. And when we found like a place to do the video that kind of represented that. And it's an area on mainland Greece where basically when the Greek economy collapsed, a lot of the trains and a lot of the train lines just stopped. And they stopped on that day and they were just never used again. So they've just sat there, rotted. The nature has grown around them, around these derelict trains, and it kind of just symbolized everything I was looking for. And you're always looking for something visual that's going to be stimulating for other people to watch,
Yeah.
and a little bit more unusual than maybe just standing in a studio, which I have done many, many times, because sometimes that's all you can do, that's all you've got the resources for or the time for. But sometimes you do happen across something like that. So I felt like kind of represented it. So I hope people enjoy the video as well.
Well, I saw the video. It's great, but I heard you got a bit into buggery, didn't you? I know.
I did. I'm going to release because it's quite funny, like a behind the scenes making of it, and you can hear all the insects insecting about in the background. It's like shh. It's like geez, because it was so hot. It was so hot. It was like, before dusk, so it was like roughly half seven, eight-ish till about half eight. Um, and it was still about 38, 39 degrees because it
Oh
was
wow.
sort of August time. So it was, yeah, it was bloody hot. That's all I can say. There was a lot of insects and it was bloody hot.
So the themes you talk about there on these days, does that sort of roll through the rest of the album as such, or is there a kind
um,
of loose thing?
there's parts of it, but no, there's there's songs that do definitely align with that sentiment and kind of other forms that are maybe a little bit darker,
Hmm.
but there's some sort of more I wouldn't say straightforward sort of rock tunes, but maybe a slightly more positive or kind of romantic message.
Hmm.
Who were? Who were, Mrs. So we'll
Well,
have to see what people think. Um, we've been asked behind the scenes many times, me and Steve, why don't you just write what people like will respond, you know what I mean, like with
Yeah.
a blues rock or blues community. And there is kind of a more prescriptive approach to it, and I'm not going to comment on what anyone else does, and if you do
Oh,
what you like, that's their thing. um but we're songwriters and we come up with ideas, and if it goes in one direction, it goes in one direction. I've always said that we've got characteristics of many genres. I mean, there's somebody said there was even gospel in the sort of arrangement of the backing vocals, which kind of aligns with sort of the theme of it as well. But there's characteristics of blues, rock in other songs, sometimes jazz. um, it's kind of contemporary alternative blues rock, I would say, if I was gonna have a very long label put on it. But it's which you have to do in this day and age. But yeah, so it's a mix, but hopefully it all paints a picture, a cohesive picture for the album.
thing is, though, I think you'd be very hard to push to find an artist that is purely 100% one genre or subgenre. They've, we'll listen to lots of things, and whether you're playing that music directly or not, those influence the melodies, the timbres of things, certain little lines or whatever, they're going to creep in, and it's going to end up in that melting pot between yourself and Steve. Obviously, of course, doing a lot of the writing. That is going to be you guys. It's never going to be a purist thing. Yeah, a purist, and it's in every band going. Everyone wants a pure heavy metal album or a pure reggae album or blues, pop, soul, funk, whatever it is. But I don't think it exists.
I think it existed when the genre was created
Oh yeah, if you're
and
talking,
evolved, but I think um and my take on it for me is that I wouldn't want to recreate something that I feel has been done way better before. It's kind of like there's a reverence to a lot of the old blues classics, and it's kind of like, well, why would you want to rewrite that? Because I kind of feel like I shouldn't.
yeah,
I'm not, as I say, that's my point of view, and everyone's got one.
yeah, of course,
So, that's just people, but that's my point of view. I feel they should be revered in a way and sort of trusted and honored for what they were and what they grew out of, which is some of the darkest times in
absolutely.
our human history. So it's, for me, not a genre to be messed around or to try and emulate that closely, because I don't really feel I have the right to.
Yeah.
As
So
a white woman in, from Wolverhampton, I don't really feel I could align, and obviously you can on some emotional levels, but I think it's one of the few genres. Well, it's the original genre, obviously, that grew out of slavery,
mm,
and then jazz and everything came after that, and rhythm and blues. So the other genres are never that quite as I would never be quite as tentative with. But I think with the blues, it's something that I really feel strongly about as myself. That I don't want to mess too much with that.
yeah. But like you say, those artists of like first time around people like Robert Johnson and everything else, they went through something. It was an outlet of, like you say, out of slavery, out of everything that went along with that. Um, and yeah, to quote yourself, as a white guy, I
Mm.
wouldn't think that I could, be, what's what I'm looking for. I could like understand on some level of where they were coming from, but you could never really put yourself there because you have same thing. If you've not been through it, you can't put yourself there. Simple
No, absolutely. And there's,
as that.
as I say, you can have characteristics because,
Yeah,
like you said, like, you've listened to so many different genres over the course of your life, and grew up listening to swing and jazz, and then through my parents, and then sort of went back and investigated blues, and then went through there, and then R&B, and then rock, and then all that kind of thing. So obviously, most artists, like you said, will have characteristics, but um, we couldn't write prescriptively. And I definitely, there's certain things I just wouldn't want to go near for reasons that I've got too much respect for the artists that developed that genre originally.
This is it, and I think when you're writing, like when you in this instance, when you and Steve are writing, you guys are writing where you know where you are in that moment, where you're coming from, and that always sings far louder. And I know there's a lot of people who will, you know, as a certain genre or a certain sound comes along and it's very popular, and people try and shift their sound to it to try, and you can't blame people, but people are going to do what they're going to do. But and everyone's got the right to portray the art that they wish to, like you say. But equally for me as a listener and just a music fan, those who sing from the heart, whatever genre they're doing or whatever sound sonically they're doing, if it's from the heart and from the soul, it always sings far louder than those who try to go along with the trend or a fashion or what have you.
No, I absolutely agree. And I do work with some wonderful people where I, work at a couple of unis, and I get to discuss a lot of this on a regular basis with some incredible people. Um, I re- I hope he doesn't mind me name dropping him. Steve Osborne, the producer, esteemed producer. I was in the staff room with not too long ago. And he starts telling me about when he was recording Bono's vocals and the fact that, yeah, I know, and I'm just breaking bread with him in the bloody staff room, going, "Tell me more." And he was saying to me everything that I've always thought, that you know Bono wanted to do it in the control room. He wanted to do it with a dynamic mic, and he wanted to do it with no headphones. He wanted to get the vibe
Mm.
right for his performance. And he said, we captured the performance and then it was our job to clean it up. But he said the essence, and we sort of discussed it for a long time, the essence of that vocal performance is the performance. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like the cleanest. It doesn't have to be with the best microphone. It doesn't, none of that really. Some help is sometimes good with that sort of thing, but it can never be the intensity of the performance that you get from an artist if you're their producer. It was really interesting hearing from him because he's worked with Katie Tunstall, Happy Mondays, like it was just blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And he got those performances from them. And it's kind of interesting to hear you say that about vocals and vocalists, because I think that's really like paramount above pretty much everything else about a record, is to kind of feel that it is a vocal performance.
I think so. I sort of remember. It's funny you say about the Bono thing. I remember a few years ago, and I saw an interview with Brian Johnson of AC/DC, and he was talking about when they recorded the Black Ice album, and he was chatting to Brendan O'Brien, the producer, and Brendan's saying, "You don't like being in that vocal booth with the mic, do you?" He's like, "No, I don't. I don't. I hate it. I love performing, but I hate this statically sitting simply to what Bono was saying by the sounds with the headphones and everything else." So there was like a reception room kind of thing in the studio,
Mm.
and that was like blocked off the thing, but people could like look in from the street. And basically, Brian Johnson did but they couldn't hear it, but just the fact that he was seeing people, and that's how he recorded the vocals for Black Ice, was basically in this room doing his Brian, doing his Beano, strutting about this little room where everybody looking in, but they couldn't hear it because it was soundproof. But basically watching a mini AC/DC concert in sheer silence by the sounds of it. But
Amazing. But yeah, I align with that completely. I hate vocal booths as a rule. I don't respond well to them. I've used them a few times and it kind of depends on the way they're set up, but I much prefer it to be in the control room and for it to be more of a performance than kind of some sort of boxed in
yeah.
vibe. I find it, and I've always struggled with that. So I just don't do it anymore. That's it.
Is that how you recorded the vocals for the album then in the control room, or did you do them elsewhere? Or
Steve's got a studio. So yeah, I always record them and he's always in the room, and it's always a room, it's proofed for sound, and it feels right. It always has done. And I think with working with Steve as well for so long now, that as soon as I take so much direction from him vocally as well. I know what I want to do sometimes, and sometimes it takes somebody else in the room who knows your voice to say, just pull
Mm.
back on that bit a little bit. Or if I was you, I'd just try it. Or could you, you know, so, and it's easy recording with Steve. It always has been. You know, it's a joy and a pleasure rather than something that's quite painful, which it has been in the past. You know, it has been quite painful to record vocals and not the experience that you wish it to be. So, yeah, and I think, and Steve understands my voice so well that it's just such a symbiotic relationship. Couldn't do it without him.
So they say, yeah, worked obviously Steve for a long time and worked really well with him. But I mean, has that the way in which you write and record? I mean, has that shift from the last release to this, or was it?
Um, Not really. No, not really. Um, the way we work is, you know, for the last from the last album to this has pretty much stayed the same. Me and Steve are constantly writing, so we're demoing a lot all the way through the time when we're not releasing. And so those demos form, you know, the basis of what the band get to work off. And then sometimes Steve will record a lot of the bass. And it will just, you know, it will stay Steve recorded the bass, you know. Because it's kind of like, even though I love the band to play on it, and they are on some of these, on some of the tracks, they're all on it. But sometimes, you know, you'd only be getting someone to just completely recreate what Steve's done. And it's kind of like a pointless exercise. So we always give them tracks. Obviously Neil's drumming on them all, Neil Abelard, but we always give them tracks where we feel that they could embellish or add something to. Not that we're going, can you just re-record exactly what's been put there? Because for some, it just works that it is a bit more prescriptive. So yeah, we're doing it exactly the same way. We worked with Gavin Monaghan on These Days, and we've worked with him on another track. We're working with Steve Zern on some of the other mixes. He's a great producer.
You worked with Steve
Uh,
before, haven't you? I seem to remember you saying
we
last
have,
time you did.
yeah, we have on, I think it was a stripped back album, and also the cover releases that we've
Yeah.
done this year. Yeah. We've also worked with him on other music that we've been demoing and creating that isn't part of the RD band.
Oh, cool. So you mentioned the covers there. Obviously, you've done that for you know, you were releasing those as singles for a little while. But what made you think, right, okay, now's the time to work on some originals? Because obviously you were working on originals for a while, and then you know the covers started to creep in, which was fun.
We'd got the covers on kind of recorded anyway, pretty much.
Yeah.
We'd kind of got them on the back burner, kind of recorded because we were trying out different things, and because we do the strip back gigs as well, we were trying out different things for that. So we thought, well, why not? You know, why not release them in a way? The only reason we haven't put them on like a physical copy, and people have asked for it, and we'll see basically. But the reason why we haven't is that the new album's coming out, is because, you know, that does cost money because they are covers.
Mm.
So we thought it would be nice to get them out and about in the world, means that a lot of them people will hear if they come to one of our acoustic gigs anyway. And also it kind of paved the way for, we'd already, you know, written all the songs for the new album by the time they were all coming out, and most of them, you know, fully recorded as well. So some of them are finalized now, and some of them still in the mix. But you know, it was kind of, that new album was always going to follow on from
Yeah.
this. It was always just waiting, basically waiting patiently, and it's trying to align it with kind of what we're doing. And being an independent artist, it's and I do talk about this a lot, and it's certainly not a moan, but it's just statements of fact that dependent, some artists have more, you know, financial sort of leanings to
Yeah, of course.
draw on, and that's totally cool. Everyone is from a different background and you know, has different things to rely on. Some people don't have to do a job because they can do, you know, all that kind of thing. They can put the money into it and the time. A lot of us can't do that. And so we have to do it in a way that works for us, but yet still does let us do what we want to do, because it's amazing to be releasing music still. It's amazing, I think, to still have ideas. I'm still grateful for that. I remember speaking to Tony Clarkin of Magnum about that. We talked about songs a lot, and he said to me, people always say, he said to me, why do you keep releasing, why do you keep releasing these Magnum albums? And he said, because I keep writing them.
Yeah.
And he said, why should I stop? Like, I'm just grateful that I still get the inspiration. And that's it, really. I think I'll just always write songs forever. Whether I'll be still standing on a stage forever is one thing, but I think I'll definitely still be writing.
Well, Miss Clark can find words. I mean, me and my wife often talk about big Magnum fans. So yeah, is the latter half of his career was just as fruitful in terms of the work he was putting out than, for want of a better term, the media heyday on Magnum. So why not?
Yeah,
If you keep getting inspired and you keep writing, why would you not keep with that?
absolutely. But you have to work within your parameters, and
Yeah, cool.
I think people would be surprised at the amount of money that it does take to kind of promote and engage with, radio pluggers, PR. I think people would be very, very surprised at, the word £100,000 not being of great shakes. Not for everyone, of course, but there are, that is happening. As I say, that's somebody else's thing, and that's fine. And I wish them all the luck in the world, but you've got to work within the parameters that you've got. And for one, I do actually love my teaching. I love vocals. I love teaching. I'm very privileged to work at 2 unis, and I bloody love it. And I love hearing the students' music. That's like, it re-inspires me more. And I think the majority of artists and bands that I know that are kind of sort of making a living and not scraping by, making a living, do have a portfolio career. They're not just, I always use, the example of quite high profile bands that I know that have still got full-time jobs. And,
Yeah,
it's an interesting industry, and one that is consistently, you can always say, changing.
yeah. But you, like you say, you can only work with, the tools and the resources that you've got available to you. You still getting to write and record your music. My wife's an artist, so I appreciate that on another sort of media of that factor, if you like, but totally pick up what you're putting down on that factor. But yeah, it's nice to hear new music from you, and I've seen that the single is already, it's getting good traction. The reviews are coming in great thick and fast. It's getting onto, you know, some Spotify playlists and things like that. So sort of status is on as well. So and I think it always means more when it is done a bit more organically than, and I get why people do pay for play on Spotify and stuff like that.
Don't
It's
get me on that subject.
I'm
That's a
trying
whole
not to.
other subject. Go on.
I get why people do. I can see why people would say on a very top layer would be a benefit to them, even if it's not real. The
No, it's not. But anyway, go on.
I mean, the visualization of having those figures, let's put it that way,
I totally align with that. Yeah.
rather than the actual thing. I can understand why people might be attracted to be able to say we've had that, even if it's not strictly
Yeah.
speaking the case. But when it's done more natural and when it's done thinking, it's nice to see people making waves. It's nice to do on a more organic, proper process of it. And I think going back to what we say now, real art does shine. It might not shine in the mainstream media, but I think people know the difference between someone who is paying for things and someone who's got there on their own talent, guts, hard work, and graft.
Well, I thank you. And yeah, I agree with all that you've just said. I think, and it's something that I have spoken about, and I speak about it to my students a lot. Um, the the social media stress of
Mm.
trying to keep up with the Joneses, keep up with the next band, keep up with the next artist. A lot of artists, I think, pay for playlist promotion and don't even realize that they're bots, or that they're in countries that are predominantly bot driven, or are on playlists where it's just another load of bands playing to be on that, paying to be on that playlist. So, but if it is bots, at the worst, you know, some of the worst that could happen is that you get your music taken down. The other effect is that it kind of destroys your own organic algorithmic growth, because those bots will be all kinds of genres, all kinds of countries,
Yeah.
all the metadata behind them will be all different. So the Spotify algorithm, the NLP, which has been learning all about you, now finds itself in a state of pure confusion because it has no idea why you're on a playlist against that person that isn't sonically aligned to you.
Yeah.
So it kind of, even though I can see the allure of it, and I totally understand that desperation.
Yeah.
So don't think that I don't. But all I'd appeal to people is please try and stay real, because your own, it might make you feel a bit better, but it's not going to help you out long term. It really isn't. And there's a whole load of data behind that. Just, you know, I think when Spotify first came along and streaming, it was kind of, oh yeah, just buy bot plays because it like triggers the algorithm. That's been completely disputed now. So it's I'd just like to see people be able to take control of their own data and be able to track their own progression, because I know that will help their mental health and their stability in this ever kind of depressing marketplace that the streaming world has become. And I think that's really important, you know, because social media burnout is
Oh,
really
yeah.
prevalent. And again, I talk a lot about that in a lot of different places. And if you feel you've got control, you feel a lot more stable. If all you're doing is going, oh my God, my numbers have dropped, I need to buy more, I need to buy more, I need to do this, you're running on this kind of scared vibe. Don't be scared, own your figures, and then you can grow from there, and you'll feel a lot more centered mentally, I think.
I think it's yeah, you know, it happens with Spotify, and I think it happens in radio as well. I know even, you know, I've been unfortunate. I love the fact that I'm on independence where I get to choose what I play and I'm nothing's too playlisted. And don't get me wrong, there's a place and thingy for that as well. Of course there is, but the amount of times bands that send something in and they could be just their first demo or their first debut, whatever. And if with me it's as simple as wow, okay, that sounded cool. I want to. I've always checked my shows are kind of you're in my house. It's Friday night. We're having some beers, and I'm going, man, you need to check this out. You need to listen to this, and that's sort of the kind of ethos I have on it. But and I know people will say, Lee, your opinion doesn't matter. You're on a small independent station, whatever. And but I've always got to be true to myself. But the amount of times someone sent a demo in or a single, and I thought, fuck, that sounds great. And I've just emailed them back, well, thanks to this, mate. You know, I'm going to play it on Friday, blah, blah, blah. And you get an email back saying, great, well, how much is that going to cost us to do this and that and the other? And I'm like, no, that's not how I work, man. Like, and it's sad that that happens. And I get that it happens. I get that someone's
Mm.
got to make some money somewhere. But to me, if you're not making the art, you don't get to earn it. If you're not involved in the process of, you know, if you're a producer, make sure you're a sound engineer, whatever, fine, you get your piece of the pie. But I do have a bit of an issue with people ripping off, especially rising bands as well, who are just trying to come through the
Well,
ranks.
they're ripe for the picking. That's another thing. It's been
Mm,
said many times these days that music isn't monetizable, but musicians are.
very true, sadly. Or
Very
seems to
true,
be.
sadly. Yeah, so let's take back control, people. That's what I advocate for. Take back your control. Don't spend your money. Just put it into growing your own brand in your own way. You'll feel better for it.
Yeah, if you got your community and it's organic, it'll grow. You know, there's plenty of
Absolutely.
cases of artists out there that are doing that and working for them very well. So, you know, best luck to everyone. But going back to the album, mate, when is that due to be released again?
It is October this year.
No.
So, but there'll be, either 3 or 4 singles before then, and then the pre-order link for the physicals. And so, yeah, hope everyone likes the next few singles.
I'm sure
It's
they will.
always so nerve-wracking. Absolutely. I don't know. I don't know whether people realize how nerve-wracking it actually is, because it's, I think people just think, oh, here she goes with another few set of songs, and it's like, no, this is literally so important. These are my babies, and Christ, I really hope you like them. And if you don't, I think I've said it a few times as well. You don't have to tell me. You could just not say anything. You could just scroll on to the next. I'm sure there'll be another one along in a minute.
Yeah, that's the thing. Though. People do seem to think they have to tell you,
They really do. Yeah, they
even
really
on really
do.
small, stupid stuff. Like I've posted stuff of music that I've liked, and I've just got, oh, digging this. Go check this out, and then someone's messaged me saying, "Oh, I don't like that," and I'm like, "What do you want me to do about it?"
Yeah, it's
If
like,
if you don't like it, that's fine, but I don't really need your opinion.
but yeah, it is. Again, a little bit of kindness, and before we post, I think would probably be a good thing.
Absolutely. So, is there any sort of show supporting that? Is that looking at next year for that, or are you hoping to get some more shows out tail end of the year?
We have got, it'll be out for, we've got a festival in September, so it'll be nearly out for then, and we're lining up some other gigs off that, and sort of kind of, we normally do like a winter mini tour, so it'll probably
Nice.
be all sculpted around that. I'm pretty sure Colin, the lovely manager, is on with that because he's so bloody good at everything.
Well, knowing Colin as I do, I'm sure he's already on it. So,
He'll be on it. He'll be, yeah, legend.
absolutely. So, what does the rest of the year hang on for you guys then? So, just focus in on obviously release and promotion and
Release promotion. Yeah, we've got a few gigs coming up. We've got some festivals. We are thinking about doing some live recordings as well. So we're sort
oh,
of kind of on with that. We did that a few years ago. I don't know whether it'd be released, but it's could be YouTube stuff. We'll see. So there's always things going on. I'm probably going to do another podcast season, I think, talking about the music industry.
yeah,
So people may or may not be interested in that.
that was a good season last time. I enjoyed
Well,
that.
thank you. We're going to try and make it even more honest this time, and more sort of to the crux of the matter with things. And so not just interviewing artists, but managers, agents, industry professionals, that kind of thing, on the state of the music industry, and relating it back again to kind of artists and mental health. We've got a few people sort of logged in already, so I'm just sort of setting it up now, sort of thinking about, how it's going to go forward.
Oh, nice. So, when are you looking at starting to release those? Will that be tail end of the year, or are you looking for next year with that?
Probably a bit sooner than that, but not too
Okay.
sure yet. It's just when I can line everything up. I like to have them all recorded and ready to go. So, definitely before the end of the year, I would say.
Yeah, nice one. Becca, mate, it's been great catching up with you. Thank you so much again for your time, as always, mate. It's always lovely to speak to you.
Always lovely to speak to you, Lee. Thanks so much for having us on.
No worries at all, mate. Obviously, at the beginning of the interview, I'm going to play these days with it obviously being a brand new single we'll be chatting about. What song of yours would you like us to play at the end of the interview?
Oh, should pick something uplifting. I don't know if I've written anything uplifting. Um,
Sure, yeah.
Not on My Knees from the last album.
Oh, good call. Yeah, that's got some about.
I love that.
All right, well, we'll lock that in. And yeah, thanks for your time as always, Becca. Much
Thanks
appreciated,
ever so
mate.
much, Lee. You're a legend, mate. And I hope everything
Yeah,
goes
cheers,
okay.
mate. No, I appreciate that.
All right, darling. Take
Well,
care, my love.
you too, mate. Take care. Much
Bye
love.
bye. Bye bye.
Bye, mate.